Frank, I'm looking at this very well put together, very sturdy report called ALICE. Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. ALICE. And we're going to find out about what ALICE means to all of us here in Connecticut and perhaps even around the country with our friends here from United Way GW right next on WATR. Thank you very much, Frank, for your help today. And once again, we welcome our friends from the United Way of Greater Waterbury. We have with us Kristen Jacoby. Good to have you back.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here. We have Joann Reynolds-Balanda. Good morning, VP Community
Tom.
Impact. And once again, from Post University, the president, Don Mroz. It seems like we were just together a few weeks ago.
We were, Tom. Thanks so much for having me
I'm
back.
glad to have you all here today. ALICE is a study that you have been working on, but also it affects so many people, the story of what ALICE means to people who work for a living and don't quite have enough to live on. Yeah, it's quite a study you've undertaken. And I understand that Post University underwrote a portion of the ALICE study.
That's correct. That was our pleasure to. Rutgers undertook the study, and Post was happy to help Greater Waterbury region fund this.
It identifies where ALICE lives and works, provides information to us, all kinds of information that might be useful to us and the Connecticut job sector. It's a unique story, and I think it involves perhaps more people than many of us would have assumed. ALICE really covers a lot of people who are working hard, raising families, trying to own things and rent apartments or whatever, and still having difficulty making ends meet.
Yeah, it was quite a surprise. I mean, I'll speak for all of us that are on the board, and just how widespread it is in Connecticut, because you think of Connecticut as doing really well, and we know we have, certainly a population that's underserved, but we had no idea it was so large.
It truly, when you think about it, when you hear about it, you may think, oh, that's somebody else. And then you begin to read the reports and read the stories and update yourself, and you realize it could be yourself, or maybe somebody you know, or your next door neighbor. There's many people that are working so hard, but they have this, asset limited, income constrained, and employed situation known as the working poor. Yeah. And you can really be gainfully employed and doing your best to get by and still be the working poor. Yeah.
What was amazing to me, and I mean, the two people next to me certainly know this better than I do, because they've studied this document more than I have, but 51% of jobs in Connecticut pay less than $20 per hour. And 51% of jobs in Connecticut. That is incredible. And so you can see why there are many people who might be struggling based on the income that they're making. And ALICE isn't about poverty. It's about a threshold that was set based on a lot of statistics and by county, which is really unique, I think, for a study. And so that's what makes it really special for Connecticut, because we can look across the state and say there's a large population who are underserved, but then you look by county and you really see, you drill down and you see where by county it can really be bad.
Kristen, why undertake the ALICE study, and what does it mean to the United Way donor?
Well, I think it's all what you just said, is to understand how people are struggling and what do we as a community need to do together collectively to help this group of people, and to give really a face to this group, once again working hard but may need a little bit of help. And one thing we keep talking about is that there's not one particular causation or one particular solution. So by all of us understanding this, working together as a community, it would truly make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah, I think you said giving it a face is so very helpful to focus in on the situation. What are we already learning from the ALICE study?
I think there are people in our community that get up every day that are doing their best to maintain their own income and their household and aren't making it. And I think the study has really pointed out to us that even though if we look at our poverty rates in each of our towns, they're pretty low. When you consider the ALICE population, you see a spike, a significant spike. And it's kind of an invisible population who we don't often think of. Those families that are working full-time, sometimes 1 and 2 jobs, 2 people in a household working and still not able to make it. We often get calls at the United Way from people that are looking for services, they're having a hard time, I had a call the other day from a woman who finally just said, I just can't put another meal on the table. Can you tell me somewhere I can go for that kind of assistance? And we did. But so people are struggling.
And you know, this time of year, of course, we're all working hard to help get food together for soup kitchens and for families for the holidays, and this is a growing need, which makes us realize how, you know, even more so perhaps, how much of a need is out there that we may not be aware of.
And I think, you know, just to go back when you talk about why do a study like this, I think this is something that United Way has done incredibly well in our community,
Mhm.
doing needs assessment, whether it's on our own or collaborating more recently with the hospitals and Connecticut Community Foundation to do, we call it the GWIP, but you know, understanding our community. But this sort of objective research-based look about what's happening in our community really helps all of us want to understand the need, but also hopefully position both our partners and traditional partners and other partners in the community to write grants and do other things with this kind of data.
Yeah, right now, you're in the midst of the current United Way fundraising for this year, correct?
Yes.
And hopefully it's going very well.
Yes.
So how do you see the United Way of Greater Waterbury and others taking the ALICE study and utilizing it in their works? Who wants to jump on that one?
Well, it's really being proactive, knowing
Uh-huh.
what your community needs and trying to position our resources in a way that
Mhm.
responds to those needs is really the key. So we look to all our partners in the community, other nonprofits, to align with us under basic needs, under education and income, our three focus areas, to really try to figure out what's the best way to utilize the resources. And they're limited resources, it's not an unlimited pool, so we have to really think creatively about how to be effective.
And you have numerous reports in front of you. You have so much information here about ALICE, so please feel free to jump in. I'm trying to lead a conversation here just on the tip of the iceberg, but you have so much knowledge of what you've studied, what you've learned, and what we can share with the public.
You know, I want to go back for just a second because I'm not sure that anyone listening really understands what we're talking about, and just to maybe define it. What we're talking about, you know, is minimal costs that people need to survive based on the 5 household necessities of housing, childcare, food, transportation, and healthcare. And so, again, we're not talking only a poverty level, we're talking about what does it mean to live from day to day, as Joann said, without having to miss a meal, without having to have your child go home and not have anyone there. And so there are a lot of basic necessities is what we're talking about when we look at the ALICE population. So I think it's just important that we define that for people.
Yes, very important. And we expect to have these things, to be aware of them, and to be able to enjoy some comforts as we're working hard in raising our families. And we find that there's the pinch out there, this difficult pinch to get by.
Yeah, and I think we hear this, you know, nationally in the news sometimes about the top 1% or 2% having the income and the disparate, if you might, needs that exist. But if you look at Connecticut, the top 20% of Connecticut's population earns 53% of all the income earned in the state. That's not necessarily bad, but the bottom 20% only earn 3% of that income. And so there's where you see the huge discrepancy. And so we need to help the population, you know, below that 53% and that fall into this ALICE category.
So very important. It's 8:46, 1320 AM WATR. We'll be right back with more on ALICE after this year. This morning, asset limited, income constrained, employed, and really is a wide-ranging and deeply thought-provoking report, the ALICE reports. And we have Kristen Jacoby with us, of course, from the United Way of Greater Waterbury, along with Joann Reynolds-Balanda, VP of Community Impact there, and Don Mroz is back. He is the president of Post University. Glad to have you all with us, and thank you all for your input here on this story and how the United Way of Greater Waterbury is involved in it, and what information we can glean from this report. It's very interesting. It encompasses so many people, so many hardworking people that are trying to get by.
We often think of Connecticut as one where there's high employment and good wages. But despite working very hard, 25% of Connecticut households across the state have earnings, yes, above the federal poverty line, but under a basic cost of living threshold, which is what ALICE is about. So you combine that with the federal poverty line, you're looking at 35% of households that are struggling in Connecticut. That's a huge population.
Yes, it really is. How do we look at the outcome of all this research and work? What would be your, the greatest asset of all this hard work and interest in Alice and what we can do to help?
I mean, I think there's so many different aspects of this that will be beneficial to United Way and our partners, but I think one thing that we talk about once again, that learning or looking at Connecticut, because all United Ways in Connecticut took part in this research, though, as Don mentioned, we did then get data on our own community, our 10-town area, but I think it's looking at Connecticut too and seeing that there's, significantly a different sort of portrait of Connecticut, and that it's just, understanding not, I guess, I'm not sure how to say it, but that it's just Connecticut may be a little different than people actually originally
Yeah.
see as just a wealthy state, that there's a variety of different issues within our community going on.
And I think we are labeled that out of state very often, but I think if
Yeah.
we live here, we know the difference, but
Right.
people look at Connecticut in a
Right.
certain way.
Right, and looking at those poverty rates
Yeah.
alongside Alice. And then, what does that do to our community, both social and the economic viability of our community? I mean, yesterday we were at a meeting, they were talking about, these are the individuals that are working in our community, but they're also buying in our community. They're working at local businesses, they're going to local shops, and how important is that also to our community?
Very much so, actually, yeah.
And when you look at the breakdown, of what people need, childcare is so expensive. And housing, I think housing is 30% of what in Connecticut what people pay and their income. And so once you combine just childcare for a family of four and their housing costs, all of a sudden a lot of their income is taken away.
Childcare is frighteningly expensive. It really is. I mean, you want the best service you can possibly have, but it does take quite a bit of your income.
That's one of the reasons United Way has been supporting some of the childcare services in our community that can provide a sliding scale and make it more affordable for people who do have to work and need a safe place and an educational opportunity for their children.
You just opened up a good door, and that is how can United Way of Greater Waterbury and other United Ways around the state and the country, what can we do to reach out and help? What are some of the programs we can help with through the United Way with the Alice Report? You have so many good things you do.
We do, and there's so much, even part of this research, we look to understand what were United Ways in Connecticut, not only ourselves we looked at, but also United Ways in Connecticut, what are we currently doing that are helping? And just to think about last year, United Ways in Connecticut invested more than $4.8 million in child care, early learning, promoting the availability of quality, affordable child care. So I think that's one of the, when we talk about our three major areas of education, income, which is really financial stability or basic needs, like it's all about, if you have a quality education, it will lead to a stable job, and then you'll be able to provide for your family through retirement and really take care of those basic needs that we're talking about. But once again, that's our mantra, I guess, what we're saying about the three major areas that we're focusing on.
We're talking about the Alice Report here at WATR. We're hopeful this is very interesting and helpful to you listening right now. We have to take a short weather and traffic break and then come right back here. Mroz, Chute here with you, and in studio with our friends from the United Way of Greater Waterbury. We're talking about the Alice Report, the Alice study. Creative efforts, I'm sure, and insight coming forth from the United Way and others because of this study. Where are we going to go with this, do you think?
Well, we've been implementing a strategy through the 10-year plan to end homelessness, and it's called the Flexible Assistance Fund. And it's a prevention strategy that helps to keep people housed. So before they kind of tip off into the system and spiral down into needing more services, we're able to maintain them in their own home with one-time assistance. They may need to get their car fixed to continue going to work. They may need help with a rent because they've been out of work due to an illness for a short period of time. So we've helped in the past 2.5 years about 130 households.
That's great.
And able to keep all those kids in those households safely housed.
Because are we at an income level here where we don't get the services?
Yeah,
Right.
really, that is a good point.
Right.
Many of the households that are Alice are really not eligible for some of the services, such as food stamps or some of the other benefits. So it's really important to provide some other kind of flexible help for those families.
This adds such a gaping hole in people's needs, because you do hear it all the time, that you're just above all those income guidelines and you don't get things you could also utilize.
Yeah, and Tom, I just want to be clear that these aren't people who aren't trying.
Right,
These are people
exactly.
who are working 2 and 3 jobs just to get by. And so something like the Flexible Assistance Fund just helps someone get by for a month or two where they struggled or they might have lost one job and they've got 2 others going on. And so, I mean, we're talking about people who are working hard and really trying to make ends meet. A lot of low-paying jobs in Connecticut, which I think is an aha to some of us that have been around for a while. Just surprising that there are that many.
Yeah, it's true, actually. We have about a minute and a half left, and there's so much information here. People can download this report, right,
Yes, it's
Kristen?
on our United Way website.
Mhm. They should take a look at it, because there's so much information here. It's an entire, uh, it's a good read. You should pay attention to it.
Right, and it breaks it out by community and by region. So, I mean, if people want to see where their town falls, you know, I mean, it's really a great study. And it shows, obviously, United Way of Greater Waterbury, but it also shows all the populations across the state. And it's quite surprising.
It really is, yeah.
And it was just released, what, about a week ago? So it's really new to us, and we're still digesting all the data, and we're really looking forward to having deeper discussions with all of our partner agencies and other partners and stakeholders in our community about what this study is saying and how together, once again, how do we collaborate?
And I think that United Way has been helping this population all along, but I think the fact that now we have this research, which is good research that was done by Rutgers, it actually can provide, I think, some focus now where before people might have thought it was only about people who are below the poverty level, and which isn't true. And so I think, you know, awareness is half the battle, and now we can make some other strategies and take some other actions as a result.
Very important. Thank you so much for being here today. Don, always a pleasure. And Joann and Kristen, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And I hope we got some people interested in knowing a lot more about the ALICE study, the work that can be done, and learning more from the United Way of Greater Waterbury. And get to that website and you can check out this report. This is WATR Waterbury 1320.